So we start, Steph? What do you think? Okay. 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 Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending our session, our first session of digital science series for our research. We have collaborated with digital science to conduct several workshops on digital science product. So as you know, that digital science is the leading company for research, especially managing research, distributing research, and help the researcher around the world to improve their performance and also their feasibility. So I'm very glad to have our speaker today, Stephanie. How are you, Steph? Nice to see you today.
Yes, hello. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Handoko, for helping organize this. I'm very, very humbled.
Okay, thank you. We also have, as I see in this list, we also have list here for our other speaker, and also Jess for our next week speaker. We also have Bu Ike with us, our Vice Dean from Faculty of Humanities. So maybe later on, Bu Ike will...
Miss Jess and Miss Liz.
Yeah. So later on, BEK maybe will open our session and introduce at least a little bit about our Faculty of Humanities in Andalas University. We also have many participants from different institutions. So as I discussed with Stephanie before, actually we only limit into Padang, but I see here there are so many participants from around Indonesia, or almost from different region in Indonesia, some of them also from different countries. So hopefully this session will help us at least to know about Figshare, especially for today's session. So without further ado, I will formally open this our session today. But for our first session, Bu Ike will give some kind of opening remark for our series. Bu Ike, time is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Handoko. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The honorable speaker, Ms. Stephanie Guichard, the regional sales manager for digital science and the expert of Figshare and Almetric for academic institution in Asia Pacific. We also have Ms. Jess Reynolds and Ms. Liz Me. Good morning. Nice to see you in this virtual room. Hope someday that you will be in Padang, Indonesia, and you can see the beauty of our campus. Yeah,
I would love that. Thank you.
Yeah, and we have 5 deans, 3 of Faculty of Humanities here, the lecturers, postgraduate students, and undergraduate students, all participants in the workshop about digital science online workshop series, advancing the research ecosystem. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Praise be to Allah, the Almighty God, and blessing as well as mercy to Prophet Muhammad. First, I would like to welcome Ms. Guichard, Ms. Reynolds, and Ms. Me, and all participants for being at Faculty of Humanities Universitas Andalas, Padang, Indonesia. We hope that someday you really in Padang, not only via this Zoom, via this virtual, because you know that there are many beautiful places to be visited in Padang. Even our campus, Universitas Andalas, you can see Padang from our campus. And you can see later on that how beautiful is our campus is. And we know that as the academician, research is one thing that we are dealing with. The lecturers and the students must do research and absolutely publish the result of the research. And the research is categorized successful as the publication is cited by others. To be cited, we must be able to have the research data management, publishing, and discovery. And here we are now with Ms. Guichard, next week with Ms. Reynolds and also Ms. Smee. We are having digital science online workshop series with the focus on how to use Figshare for research data management, publishing, and discovery. and we are going to be enriched with the knowledge about this. I'm sure that some of us here are not familiar yet with Figshare, and later on we hope that Figshare will be something that are familiar with us. And I, in this occasion, would like to personally thank Ms. Gichard, Ms. Reynolds, and Ms. Me for the time and sharing knowledge as well as experience. I do hope that we all can learn and implement what we have today in order more citations and more publication created by not only lecturers but also the students as well as researchers. Thank you, Ms. Gichard, Ms. Reynolds, and Ms. Me. And to all participants, please enjoy this insightful event. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you, Pak Andoko.
Okay, thank you, Bu Ike, Vice Dean 1, Faculty of Humanities. It's really a nice invitation for Stephanie, Jess, and Liz. Hopefully, Liz, Stephanie, and Jess can visit Padang sometimes next time. Yeah. Okay. So without further ado, we are going to go to the next session of our event today. So before I introduce Stephanie, I would like to introduce Stephanie before she gives the topic today. So as you see in our flyer, in our poster, you can find that Stephanie is a regional sales manager for digital science, specialized in Figshare and Allmetric. So Stephanie has experience in publication, managing publication, journal sales, and also currently she stays in Australia, yeah, in Melbourne, if I'm not mistaken. So Steph, are you ready?
I'm ready. I've started sharing my screen. Can you just confirm you can see it?
Yes. Okay.
Excellent.
It's nice to see it. Okay. Okay, Steph, times is you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, everybody. I'm very, very happy to be here. I thank you for your time. And I hope this will be an interesting conversation that we can have, and you'll learn a lot more about Figshare if you're not so familiar with it. For those who are familiar, maybe this will be a refresher for all of you. And Liz and Jess will be also keeping an eye out for any questions. Please put them in the chat box. That's fine. We can get to them later on. And thank you so much for the warm welcome. I am the Regional Sales Manager for Digital Science for the Asia Pacific region, and I am based in Melbourne, Australia. And I've been with Digital Science now for nearly 6 years. And previous to that, I've been working with publishers. I worked for Springer Nature. And so I'm very well tuned with basically the academic industry, but also I think my passion stays with researchers themselves. I have a lot of friends and a lot of colleagues who are still active researchers, and a lot of them are also engaging with different tools and platforms. So Figshare comes up in a lot in conversation. And really, we're here today to talk about Figshare as one of these leading repository platforms in the market. And it's really all about accessing, but managing and storing all of your different types of scholarly content and data, your different academic works. And that basically enables you to publish, showcase, and visualize them within your browser. So as you can see here in this opening slide, what Figshare does, as the name suggests, it's all about sharing your figures and showcasing how your research should be looked upon as how you wanted to present it to your audiences. And it sits within this part of the digital science ecosystem, which is very much driven by the research community at Digital Science. So we have these are our 4 flagship products, and we will talk about Altmetric and Dimensions during this series, but today we're talking about Figshare. And really it's all about how Figshare can sit within your special ecosystem, your research work life flow and workflows. And it basically is where it is a tool, it is a platform for storing and managing and sharing, showcasing your research. And it complies with different types of mandates that you might be involved in, whether that's at a funder level, a publisher level, or an institutional level. And really today, I wanted to talk about and give you an introduction and the background about Figshare. Then we'll look at Figshare in action. So I will go into a front-end demonstration of some Figshare examples that you can follow along with. And then we'll look at how to upload, how to manage and publish content on Figshare. And then hopefully by then we'll have enough questions and answers and we can open up the floor to discussion. So, and there we go. So what is Figshare really? It's a repository. So basically it's where you can store, you can publish, you can access all different types of research outputs. So it's not just about data and data sets. It's also figures. It could be papers, your publications like preprints, theses, books and book chapters, reports, teaching and learning materials, conference presentations, different types of, I would say, creative works. I come from a humanities background. So again, it's not just paper-based content. It can be anything that is something that's a physical object that becomes digitized and it becomes part of your collection and portfolio of work. So that can be in media format, it can be in a software, or even a code format. It could be a record of a performance. So much, much more than just paper-based outputs. And so why are universities for many, many years now, over a decade, a lot of them have repositories. They build upon repositories that have been in the open source market for a long time, or they have a commercial offering. But why are universities around the world, why do they invest in repositories? And mainly it's because they need a home, they need a place for their researchers to actually store and manage all of their outputs. It can't be the burden of the researcher to source their own. With Figshare, it's also about tracking impact. So anything that has been already published on figshare.com or throughout the Figshare repositories that we partner with, that links to about 80,000 citations already. And it's also about the sustainability. We conduct an annual report called the State of Open Data. And it shows here that 76% of researchers across different disciplines are now sharing their research data, and data being content in general, they're sharing that publicly in a repository. So whether or not it's their institutional repository or their publisher's repository or their funder's repository, it's in a repository platform of some sort, because there's been an instruction to them to ensure that it is persistent, it complies to mandates or instruction to ensure that the research project and all of its collaborators, this content needs to be publicly available somehow. Repositories also give you control over your outputs. So it's all about interoperability and integrate the ways in which it can integrate with other systems at your university, for example. It's also about curation and review of submissions so that there's quality information with your repository content. And this includes custom metadata, as well as access restrictions where needed. It's also about publishing. So you publish quicker on your repository than you would with, say, a journal publisher. And then you can publish on your own terms, on your own types of licenses. And then you can start linking and associating maybe your papers with other supplementary materials like data sets, media files, code, performances, events, conferences. So everything is grouped together in a coherent way. Again, about compliance, especially in Australia, where I live, a lot of it has to do with funder compliance. So anything that is publicly funded by the taxpayer, whatever research is going on, that research needs to be visible to the general public. It could also be a government mandate where basically anything that is from a specific state at a federal level or national or state level, whatever you're working on, that also has to be transparent within the institution, the researcher, and the government in which it's associated with. The same with publishers. So if there's an open access mandate from a publisher where the paper can be showcased first and then the data comes after an embargo, that's where publishers also step in. And of course, I think most importantly for every university or academic institution, it's the institutional mandates. because they also have to then look upon their government or their national research assessment bodies. So this is where, for example, in Australia, we have Excellence for Research Australia, same with which is called ERA. In the UK, the United Kingdom, there is REF, which is another every 5-year assessment body, which looks at the excellence frameworks of research that's being conducted in the country. So those are really important for compliance. And finally, there's also research data management. So a lot of institutions or academic organizations will have different types of planning and what kind of best practices there are. And that includes sharing and access of outputs of your research, how to reuse and distribute it, so the promotional aspect of it. And it has to have very good metadata and good descriptions. And it needs to be preserved where or accessed at different levels. So having some kind of research data management plan, that's good. Figshare can help with that. But it also is determined by your university's requirements and what type of planning you already have in place or you're thinking about strategically in future. There you go. And what does Figshare support? Basically, we like fair. Everything, we're aiming to be fair. We support open access. So any type of research output should have no access barriers. Knowledge should be shared with everyone. It should be also, it doesn't matter what format that you publish your work in. It could be a PDF, which is a report. It could be your paper. It could be your thesis. Or it could be a complex object viewer where you just don't need the added software to download in order to view that object. So really, we want any kind of file or format to be open access available to any kind of audience. And it could be from across all different subject areas and disciplines. It doesn't have to be just concentrate on the sciences. It can be overarching and overreaching. It could be with the humanities and creative works as well. So basically any type of content, research output, or scholarly contribution in any format in any discipline should be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And this way, it's shared with the wider community for every type of audience's benefit. If you're in a scientific sense, any kind of results that you have from an experiment should be shared, whether they're positive or negative results. If you're in the arts and humanities space, if it's something that is a method that is successful or unsuccessful, that should also be shared. And this in order to reduce all of this duplication of work that's already been performed, and especially for early career researchers, sometimes they just don't know where to look. So if they have an open book in front of them, open access materials that are available to them, they can learn faster that way, gain recognition for that content that would have already otherwise been unfound, unpublished, and then you don't get any credit for it. And really, Figshare was built by and for researchers, for the research community in mind. And it continues to evolve with the global research community. Handoko, I'm very, very proud to say that we enjoyed you being a Figshare ambassador, and we hope you continue to be one. And it's really about listening to the needs and the requirements and the ideas going forward. And really, we have this mission statement and core beliefs. Again, we believe everything should be open access, but open as possible, but closed as necessary. Things should not be behind a paywall. Everything should be interoperable with humans and machines where possible. Infrastructure should be interchangeable. So that means if you decide from one platform, you go to another platform, Figshare will be easily interconnected with them. Researchers should never have to put in the same information into different systems at any given time at your institution. Having an identifier for everything. So Figshare aims to preview all of those different formats within the browser, but it also gives every public item or landing page its own DOI. And that's really important. That's one of the benefits. And really, it's all about the impact of your research. It should be independent of where it's published and what type of output it is. It really shouldn't be about being noticed in a Nature journal article just because it's published in Nature. It shouldn't receive that much more attention than if you published it elsewhere via your repository. So another interesting aspect really is that the data and non-paper publishing of outputs is on the rise. Figshare's only just turned 10 years old. And so back in 2011, 2012, very low amount of content was published. And that was not even probably 1,000 back then. But now we're looking at 2021, at the end of 2021, and it's nearly about 24,000 different types of non-paper or non-text content is now being published. And that is a trend that we hope to keep seeing over time. And that means materials that are non-traditional to papers and are across a range of different disciplines are now getting noticed. So that's the discoverability aspect. And basically what that also means is that any kind of content before you publish it can still be stored and accessed privately. It could be curated, so it could be a researcher or administrator led, especially when you're depositing it, when you're submitting something. There are all these other ranges of storage. So we provide AWS storage or any kind of compatible storage provider at your university. That's up to you, that's your preference. And there's also ways in which you can then also interact with our API. Figshare has a really flexible API and FTP uploader for very large files. And there's also then, again, the general user interface, which we will look at later on today. So basically, I want to show today with using Figshare, you can track your outputs reuse, its engagement and impact. Everything that is public is assigned a customized DOI or a digital object identifier, or you have the choice of having a handle. That's usually for papers. Traditionally on paper or publication repositories, handles are assigned. DOI is probably the gold standard for a number of reasons. And this also plays into the altmetric discussion, which we will talk about during the series. But it also is the thumbprint for that particular output. Every landing page, every public landing page has its own views, downloads, citation information, and altmetrics attention, if there is any. So then you can look at these different metrics just to see how your work is being talked about, how it's being spread and shared. In the back end of Figshare, administrators are able to access statistics dashboards as well, just to see trends in where certain things are being published, what type of subject area, what type of items. And then there's also the ability to integrate with a research information system. So that way, all of the things that are getting published are harvested into that system, and you can reuse all of that information to build upon your portfolios, your profiles, your CVs, and a lot more. But that's basically a very high-level overview, I guess, of what Figshare is. But I now want to show you some public-facing examples, because I think that's a lot more meaningful. Let's put it that way. So this is an example of just a public Figshare landing page. I can share all of these links with you, but they are also embedded in this presentation that I'm showing you as well. So I'll share that around. This is just a PDF. I can interact with it in the browser. So this is, again, you don't need extra software to view these different file types. And this is just an example of a PDF. It's a report. It's one of our digital science reports that we do every year called the State of Open Data. And it's also basically in conjunction with Figshare and Springer Nature. It's all about looking at open data and the movement of open data since its inception. So I can read it. This can be read on my mobile phone, my laptop, my whatever device that I have. So I can interact with it. As long as I have an internet connection, I can read it. And then I can download it for later use. So basically, as an example, this is just where the file lives. It's been uploaded, it's been presented here on the page. This is the title, the State of Open Data 2021. It's the type of item it is a report. This is the data it was posted on, and these are all its authors with a brief description, a history of when it was first online and posted, and other references where it points to something else that it's linking to this report. And then you can see some usage metrics here, views, downloads, a citation. So if we click on that, it'll take us to where another publication has actually cited this report that's living on Figshare. This takes us to the dimensions database, and it shows that this particular publication has cited that report that lives on Figshare, and we can find this out by linking it to its DOI. So this is where every item has its own DOI. It has a persistent URL up at the top, but this is the most important ID you will ever need. And Figshare mints these on behalf of institutions. Same with the altmetric attention score. If there are any altmetrics attached to the item that's being published, we can click out, and then we can see where the attention for this particular report has being received. So a lot of light blue, that basically means Twitter. So we can see, again, using that DOI has been shared across Twitter, it's been shared across a blog, and as well as Facebook. And then you can jump into these different tabs of where the attentions come from, and you can see where a lot of that Twitter attention is coming from, and go into those different profiles and actually analyze the types of people that are talking about this on social media. And there's branding. So this is part of our digital science Figshare universe, I guess. So it's being branded as digital science. And along with other public items, again, you've got categories. So these are based on fields of research and the types of disciplines that it falls into. And keywords. And keywords are free text, so they can actually support your own keywords, I suppose, as well as suggestions that Figshare's already picked up on. And you can even write it in Bahasa if you really needed to as well. So there's a way in which you can also use other scripts, other languages to describe your content. And this is really important for the discoverability aspect when you are publishing your work. So if you want something to stand out on Google Scholar, on Google datasets, have as many different descriptive words as possible. And then we also have the type of license. So in this case, it's a CC Creative Commons BY 4.0. And institutions that we work with define their own licenses for reuse, whether or not it's a copyright license, a code license, an open domain license. You define that at the institutional level. And then you can export all of this metadata pertaining to this file in these different reference managers. At the top here, there's the cite button, which I just clicked on to see the DOI, to copy the DOI and the citation style. Figshare supports over 6,000 different citation styles. So the default being DataCite, because we mint DOIs from DataCite, but it's also our default. But there are different types, and it goes across all of those different disciplines. So it changes each time we decide to, we're seeing something on Figshare, we want to have a particular way in which something should be cited or be part of a bibliography. This is one way of doing it. I can download this file for later use, no problem. I can share this file. And again, if you're sharing it via email to a colleague or a friend, sharing it on your LinkedIn profile or on Twitter or on Facebook, that's where that DOI comes in very valuable, because it'll point directly to this landing page and people can access your content immediately. Embedding this also helps for researchers. By copying the snippet of text, you can open up a widget. You can put it on your personal sites if you have any, or embed it into faculty sites so that you can see a little preview on your site about what you've published on Figshare. It can be used in your portfolios or CVs as well to highlight something that you've published, and people can go directly to it, or you can put it on your email signatures. The collect button is basically when I'm logged in and I can start creating my own favorites list of things that have been published on Figshare. And these more options is basically claiming authorship if needed, or you can report directly to Figshare that something inappropriate has been published, which we do thorough checks internally, but it's one way of also contacting that maybe there's been a spelling error. The administrator needs to pull it down for whatever reason, and I'll go into that later. Another example here, I like to show this example because it's a poster. So it's not text as such, it's more visual, it's just a one-page PDF. And the reason why I like to show this one is because of its metrics, but also because of its age. It was published back in 2015 and it's still receiving some decent attention. So anything basically that is aged, I shouldn't say that is older content that even may have lived on your current repository or an older repository, it can be transferred over to Figshare. If it has already an identifier, we can still move on to those identifiers onto Figshare. So that's no problem. There's no minting of a secondary DOI, but also because it's more visual this way. So older content that's been maybe behind certain access walls can now have a second life by using Figshare. But I like showing this just because it's a poster from a conference. This is why I also encourage those who use Figshare for their symposiums or their teaching materials, use Figshare to highlight the fact that that is also a scholarly work that should be showcased. Another example of, I think this might be helpful to those who are publishing actual journal articles. This can also be used for a range of other means where it could be your internal institutional printing press or your university press, where you're contributing to journal articles themselves internally as well as externally. This is a one way. I think I opened this just because it's got a handle. So some content can actually have a handle and your other content can have a DOI. And that'll also be customized according to your institution's name. In this case, it's RCSI, which is the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland. And this one's actually a really good example of a journal article that's has a really good abstract. It's got some history. It actually has a published citation style that they want people to follow. And all of this information that you see here is all this custom metadata that RCSI, this one of our partners, has decided on. So that's completely customizable at the institutional level. And again, just another way to show that you can interact with different file types. This is just an Excel spreadsheet. And again, you can go into the different tabs. You can download this for later use. This can be used for a multitude of things. It's all about the reuse and recognition of the different works that are housed on Figshare. And again, here's what's called a composition, but it's also a video. It's a media file that I can just play within the browser. I don't think my music is on. You can watch something that's been recorded and view it within the browser without interruption, and just like this recording, we're recording this, this webinar right now. I will share this on Figshare in the same manner. Audio files, the same thing. It could be an object file. In this case, this is one of my favorites, the dinosaur skull, and I can interact with it. I can make it move. I can zoom in. I can see what type of skull that it is. And the same for chemical structures. So I like this one. It's like a spinning molecule. So this is also interactive. And that's the fun part about Figshare. It actually enables other audiences who may not even be researchers themselves. They may not be publishers. They may not be people who really understand the workings of your specific expertise. But the fun thing is it's an interactive experience. So we're encouraging people to upload all of their different findings onto Figshare. I think this is also a good example where you can link your work to a peer-reviewed publication. So in this case, if I click on this, this should now take me to the ACS publication that it is associated with. So again, it's all about linking your supplementary material to the paper. So it's not about the citations only to the paper. The paper has been made because you made data happen. You conducted experiments, you performed something, you recorded something. So all of those different things and activities that you have done as a researcher, you've performed all of these things to make up your paper. The paper should not be the only thing that gets credit. It should be all those things that you made the paper, that should also get the credit. And that includes your models, your performances, your plans, your results, positive or negative. They should all be housed somewhere, and they should all be linking out to the finished product, which is basically the paper. And again, map data. If you had I don't know, if you're especially in the performing arts, you have a tour or you have different locations where you're interviewing people, and that interview will be part of your paper in the end. Publish it, publish all the locations, make it as visual as possible. People like, I like to joke that people nowadays have such short attention spans. The more visual, the better. So map data is also really important for, say, for example, archaeology, or actually even just scientific and social science disciplines as well, where they do a lot of investigations, or you're trying to tell a story, but not in a I can't say the word today. You're not looking at the methods in which it was done, but you're trying to show through visuals how that was created. So I like showing this one too, just because it was map data. I only recently found out what a KML file was. I wouldn't know what software to download. And now I don't need to, because it's showcased on Figshare for me. And it doesn't have to be just one file at a time. It could be multiple files at a time. So this is just an example of a group of 146 different video files that are displayed here. Another example is basically this one from the University of Sheffield. This one's actually a really good example just because it has 43 files attached. I can go through each individual one by itself, or I can download all of them and look at them for later use. But the interesting thing about this is that it has different versions. So Figshare supports versions, and what that means is if we look at this version 5, which is the most recent version of this record, there's a lot of description. There's a lot of keywords for easy discoverability. We've got some dates, we have some references, we can view the open access journal article from PLOS. It's also linked to its other paper repository on ePrints. And then it has some ethics and policy and sharing and access restrictions. And this is all custom metadata fields that the researchers have filled in. But if we go back to its original version, version 1, only 4 files are attached. You can see that it's an old version and there's hardly any description, very little description. There's still a lot of keywords, but very little information about those 4 files. Let's compare it to version 2. You can see the time and date stamp. Oh, one of the files was removed. So there might be reasons why this has changed over time. And that may be at the discretion of the authors. It may be because of the University of Sheffield, it changed certain policies. Maybe the authors needed to publish some files along with the publication that it belongs to. Many reasons for it. But if we go back to version 5 and see the full proper updated version, it is connected to that PLOS article, the +1 article. We can go straight there. We can see that it is linked to the journal article on the PLOS site. But the interesting thing is the DOI stays the same, and it's also customized. So here's the prefix 10.15131 Sheff data, because it belongs to the University of Sheffield. It has the same article name, which is basically minted when you first published this record, but it has a V5 attached. So it really doesn't matter when you're citing V1, V2, V3, V4, V5, it'll still link back to the to this original DOI string, and then it'll aggregate all of the metrics associated with this particular record. So it's contiguous. And in addition to grouping content, you can also create a collection. So when I say collection, anyone can create a collection. It's basically, you're looking at Figshare as a whole, or you could be on, in this case, Monash University's music archive, and you see something really, really interesting that you want to aggregate together or form something that makes sense to another audience. You can actually log in and create, an administrator, for example, can create a collection on behalf of an author or a group of authors. In this case, this is a collection of shadow puppets. There are 24 individual item records that are collated together in this collection. If I just click on Bima here, there are 2 files associated with this one item record, and that one item record has its own DOI to cite. So I could be talking about this in a book or a book chapter, and I can cite it this way with this DOI. But the other thing is I can cite the entire collection. So I can be talking about this entire collection, even though it has 24 individual records associated with it. And we can see here, actually, the authors are the Music Archive of Monash University. And that could be a group of administrators creating this record. And we can see again the categories it resides in and the different keywords, and that helps with that discoverability aspect. We've got some metrics. Another way of also putting interesting things together, interesting item records together, is creating a project. Now, a project is slightly different from a collection. A project will only have a citable URL and no DOI attached to it, and there are reasons for this. It's also controlled by the members. So someone will be inviting their colleagues or co-authors from internally or externally. They can all collaborate privately on work that they're trying to finish. Someone can just be a viewer and just make comments about the files that have been shared with them. But they control, these 9 members of this project control what is in the project. And then they can publish what they want individually, or actually put different access restrictions on the content. So just like the collection we saw before with 24 different item records, this one has 17, and some of them have different access restrictions. Some of them are completely open. Some of them are under a permanent embargo, but exposing the metadata. So you can't see the files, but we can see the metadata. And so on. And these are all these people are part of this project. So that's another way of controlling access. Let me just check something. This is an example of something that is under embargo. So it is public. This does have a DOI. Here it is. But there's a countdown of when the files themselves will be available for consumption, available for access. So it's a thesis. We can see a brief description or abstract of what this thesis is about. And we have some information about the supervisors, the departments. We have some keywords, the licenses and copyright, so it's not a Creative Commons license, and the categories, and it's had some views. So people are viewing this, but they can't see the files. Not yet anyway. Where things are, this is another thesis. You can also give a reason of why the files are not public. In this case, it's another copyright reason. So this can be, a request can be sent to documentdelivery@monash.edu. And again, you can look at the abstract or the description. You can see some other information about the supervisors or the departments in copyright, some of the keywords. So it doesn't have to just be text only, it can be numerical. And it had some decent views already. And maybe some of those views led to people emailing the document delivery service. Another way of also showing how to access embargoed information, you can request access to files. So in this case, I can email the authors directly or the administrators of this institution, put in my email address, and actually provide information of why I want to be able to access the files. So this is where, if you recall at the beginning of this presentation, where we try to be as open as possible, closed as necessary. This is one of those ways of being as open as possible, but closed as necessary. So closing off access or certain access to your work, but exposing as much of it as you can is basically the principle of this example here. It's also, maybe it's due to commercial sensitivity, it could be cultural sensitivity. So a lot of creative works, for example, might be culturally sensitive. It might be historically, it might be historical significance, but it's also being worked on, or it's being passed on to a new group or a project, and they're trying to maybe verify provenance of something. I think it'd be many reasons of why you would want to request access to files or set that restriction. Let's cancel that. And another way in which Figshare is able to restrict access, but also share it. This is just an example. I don't have a live example of this, but I'll find one hopefully soon. You're making files available to perhaps members of your university only. So it's essentially publishing something, but you're publishing the full context of it to certain audiences or certain groups at your institution or certain people at your institution. Or it could be on a particular IP range. And this could be for, again, a myriad of reasons. And this is called our restricted publishing functionality, which I will show you in more detail later on. So this is, again, being as open as possible. It's closed as necessary. You want to be closed to maybe certain groups of people, certain individuals, but be as open as possible to others. And you could also then point files that live elsewhere. Some files are very, very large and they live on a completely different server. They might be password protected, and you don't want to have to physically upload it again into Figshare, which you can use the API for. There's an FTP uploader if it's a very large file. Figshare accepts file uploads of 5 terabytes. That's the maximum threshold. And I think you can have up to, maybe 500 different files attached to one single item. So really it's dependent on your processes, but we can point to where the files are living, and you can create a metadata record for this purpose. So people can cite this record, but the files live elsewhere. And finally, when you do publish on Figshare, you get your own Figshare profile. This is Mark Hannell, and he is the founder and CEO of Figshare. And the reason why he created all of this really was when he was doing his PhD in stem cell biology, that was his output. That was the paper. His paper was his baby, basically. But what about all the things that made up his paper? He had a lot of videos of stem cells going from one end of the screen to the other end of the screen. He put them up on YouTube and Vimeo, and all of those links break. You can put them on different sites, and then suddenly the URL changes and people can't find your stuff anymore. He had transcripts, he had lots of data sets and spreadsheets of useful information that he thought, well, other people can benefit from the work I've already done. Some of it's wrong, some of it's right. I need a place to put it all together. And so he created Figshare in that sense. And Figshare was born from that idea, and in collaboration with his research network and the research community and people he knew at his institution at the time, which was Imperial College London, this idea came to light. And so everything that each Figshare account or person that has an account publishes on it, you can see a little bit of biography about them. You can hook up your ORCID. I completely recommend every researcher out there gets an ORCID. It's basically your thumbprint. It's like your passport to your research world. And it's interchangeable with all the institutions that you move to and from. You can put your occupation, what kind of expertise or fields of research that you belong to, your location, your links to social media. Everything he's published has an aggregate metrics. You can see his co-workers and collaborators of people that he's worked with and published on Figshare with, some of his publications and achievements, and these are his different content that he has actively participated in, contributed to, co-authored on Figshare. So a lot of them will be the webinars, a lot of them are reports, but a lot of his stuff is also academic. I think it's probably at the bottom somewhere. So that's basically the front end of Figshare. This is showing some examples of how people are using it, some of the different items that are housed on Figshare. There are many, many different types of things that live on Figshare. I will highlight Monash University, that's in Melbourne. That's my alma mater. I went to Monash University and they have bridges, bridges.monash.edu. That's their repository's name. So they chose that name, Bridges, because I think anecdotally it means Sir John Monash, I think he was a structural engineer and he's the founder of the Monash University. So I think because of his background, he actually was involved in building bridges, and therefore the name is a homage to his background in engineering. And basically what their repository is full of is a lot of stuff, a lot of posts, over nearly 10.5 million views, and nearly 3 million downloads. And so they're quite proud of the fact that their repository has gained all of these different statistics. There's a public statistics page where you can actually explore further about what's being published on their Figshare instance. So we can look at these different metrics like views and downloads over a certain time frame, over a certain grouping. I'll go into groups in a moment. The different item types, so whether or not we want to look at, well, how many media sets are there, or journal contributions, presentations, what have you. We can see that. We can see where a lot of the activity is coming from in the world, which are the top items. So one, for example, this one's had the most views so far anyway. We can check that out. I'm really curious of what it is. It's a PDF, okay. Project Neurocam and Investigation. So it's a thesis. Someone's thesis is actually getting a lot of love, it looks like, from the Department of Multimedia Digital Art, Faculty of Art. I'm really happy with that because it's humanities based. And it's had a lot of views, a lot of downloads. It's got some altmetric attention, which is great. No citations at the moment, but that might build over time. So someone's done a lot of promotional work in this sense, and that's really, really good. That's really good to hear and to see. The top groups, so which groups in the repository is receiving a lot of attention that way and a lot of views. The top categories, so that's again by the field of research. Top item types, so no surprise, thesis is getting a lot of views. And referral, so where are people finding information that is housed on Figshare? Google will always be in the top 5, I would say, but a lot of the time it's also the library site. It could be their libguides, it could be their discovery layer that's actually discovering, making people look for content that is then taking them to their Figshare landing page. If I just go back to the main page, if that loads. Excuse me. Monash University actually used Figshare initially just for data. So it grew from just research data and data sets. They moved over all their theses from their old repository into Figshare. And then they also have it built upon different subject areas and themes. So the Faculty of Information Technology, for example, has a sub repository for their information. There's a learning spaces, so that's dedicated to all of the learning materials from certain departments or faculties of Monash University. There's one for geophysics. There's one for the Monash University Publishing. So this is the publishing arm, the academic publishing press of Monash University that uses Figshare for books and book chapters. It could be a series. It could be portfolio building for certain themed academic presses. Then there's also the thesis group. There's also the Visualize Your Thesis competition. That's national and international. And that goes on I believe every September around Open Access Week. And then there's also the music archive. So it uses Figshare for a variety of different reasons. We see a lot of other universities solely using it for the purposes of open access materials. And it doesn't matter what type of material it is, it has to be open access. So again, some of the top themes being thesis, learning and educational materials per faculty. It could be also digitized humanities. So it's also promoting the performance arts, creative works. We're also seeing this for linguistics. So people that are involved in, again, very humanities-based, but there might be a psychological or scientific attachment to that. It could be cross-discipline, cross-faculty. And it could also be for, well, the Australia-Indonesia Centre, a cultural exhibition of content, conferences, even internal symposiums. That's what Figshare can be used for. If I just go into, for example, the thesis group, just because lately I've been talking to a lot of universities about housing theses, we can see that there are, a lot of them will be under embargo, but there are some that, sorry, let me just go back. There are subgroups that fall under theses. So I could be concentrating my search on these different groups in total. So there are 12, I think it's grown. So they can be under faculty or department. So in this case, the Monash University theses group is subdivided into theses from these different faculties. And this is all post 2016, I believe. And they keep adding to it. So that's one way of dividing your content, giving it its own look, its own feel. It has its own URL up here. It's still attached to the top level repository, which is bridges.monash.edu. I might pause there. Are there any questions? Because I wanted to also show how to upload and publish content, but I might have given you all a lot of information so far. So I thought I would pause for questions.
Steffi, there's one question that's come through saying, are those applications safe from academic criminals, for example, plagiarism?
Okay, so that's a very good question. So especially for theses, if your institution has a license to authenticate, we can plug that in. Other anti-plagiarism tools are not supported at the moment. I think they can be considered for integration, but you'd have to give us more detail about that, and the technical team can definitely assist with that. But yes, there is an authenticate integration if your institution has a license to it. Are there other questions, or should I continue? Might continue then. Thank you for the question. So I'm just going to show you now how to basically upload and publish on Figshare. For those of you that have a free figshare.com account, it's kind of like having your own Gmail account versus an enterprise Gmail, which is what Figshare subscription is, just like what Monash has. Basically, you just log in and then you are presented with your, I like to call inbox, I guess. So when you log in with your institutional email address and your password, or it could be via SSO or another type of integration or authentication, you have this, what looks like basically like an email inbox actually. So this My Data tab shows all of the items that you as the logged in person have created. Now, there are different roles and permissions that can be divvied up within your institution. So a lot of researchers will just have the basic profile settings and ability to publish. And then that might change from review to administrators. So right now I'm logged in as an administrator. So I have a lot of different menu options, and I will take you through some of those. But basically everyone has virtually nearly the same view. You have a list of all the things that you've created, the status of each of them. So anything that's green means it's slightly public. Embargo basically means you have this little countdown timer, which shows that your item is completely public except for the files. Public with a green circle means your item is completely public and is consumable by anyone on the internet. Under view or decline means that there is a review process in progress. And basically that means you as a researcher or an author, you've submitted something and someone is reviewing it or checking for it, curating it, modifying it, what have you. That's part of their workflow. But by default, everything you create is either in a draft or a private format. You can see the type of item that it is. The type is also configured at your institution's level. So basically, if you're a small university and you only care about data sets and media files and posters, you can have those different types of items when it was created and the size of the file. So when you do create a new item, Figshare assumes that you want to attach some kind of file to it, to the record that you're creating. Just for the purposes of the demo, I will just browse for a file. I will, let's see, my Figshare doc upload. It's a very boring Word document. And when you're uploading, we're basically looking now at filling in metadata fields. Anything with a green dot here are mandatory metadata fields that are required in order to publish. So if you don't fill in a green dot, you will be prompted to fill it in. So for example, the title, you need to give your item a title, and tips come up on the right-hand side in giving you some instruction of what to fill in. So title, this is a great document. The authors, because I'm logged in as Christopher Blumsen, who's the product director at Figshare, I can actually take him off and put in my own name. So I could be uploading this on behalf of someone else. As an example, I could also add in my external collaborators. Let's just pretend Mickey Mouse is one of my external collaborators. Maybe Donald Duck in the system. Oh, Donald Duck is not in the system, but I can add his author details in. So I can add in his first name, his last name, his institutional email address that identifies him as part of another external, could be an internal university, or I could find him by his ORCID. So this is, again, ORCID disambiguates people's names. People's names change over time. People change to their married name, or they are only known by their initials, or maybe they have 7 names like I do, and you shorten it to maybe like 1 or 2 names. So it basically, it helps identify the right author, especially when, at least in Australia, you have a lot of people with the surname Smith or Jones. There's so many John Smiths and John Jones, you don't know which person that you're talking about or affiliating yourself with. So institutional email address is always good. So is the ORCID. let's close it. I'll disregard Donald Duck for the moment. We have categories. So again, these are based on how your research is affiliated with according to the field of research or expertise. You can just find it during this using the drop-down list. We can go through what type of, what did I click on? Let's see, I'm just going to put climate and suggestions will pop up for me, and I'll put climate science and climate change processes. The item type basically is the type of item that I need to select in order for it to publish, and I can select from all these different types of items. So if I look at thesis, it gives me an idea of what a thesis entails. I'm just going to choose a journal contribution. I skipped over group just because this is a selection which is pretty much reserved for what we call a user plus role. And that could be at an administrative level, because every time you log in, you as a person only are affiliated to the group or the faculty that you belong to. But if I'm doing this on behalf of someone else, I can actually affiliate this with something outside of my registered group, because if I belong to, say, the climate change project group and Mickey Mouse is an external, maybe I need to link those two groups together. Keywords, again, this is where it gets important because you want your stuff to be findable, especially on Google and other search engines. So if I put climate science, there you go. Figshare's already given me some suggestions based on what other users have actually put in when they're being populating the keywords. I'm just going to put climate science. I can type. This is a test. A, B, C, D, etc. So all of these different keywords are meant to be snappy. They're meant to be short. They're meant to be able to be harvested into all these different search engines so that your work surfaces first, essentially. The description, again, it's giving context, it's giving instruction, methodologies of what your work is. Why have you done this? What are the highlights? What is the abstract? And it could be bilingual. It could be in English as well as Bahasa Indonesia. It could be anything really. This is our great paper. And then you just fill it in afterwards. Funding is not actually a mandatory field, but funding plays an important role. I think I may have skipped over this, but sorry, I'm just jumping around here. If I go here, sorry, this is one of my other public. I just want to find that example of a funding field that's been populated. It might be in this one. No. Sorry, everyone. I know I'm jumping around. Just wanted to find an example of a funding field that's been filled in, just because that also links out to the dimensions database. And I wanted to show it from, and let me find something. Sorry, everyone. What I wanted to show you is basically it's linked to the dimensions database, where you can find some really, really interesting, here we go, I think it's this one, funding information and grant information. And it could be free text. You can also look at the different ways in which we're collecting funding information. So there's an example here that this data set, I believe, set of different videos has been funded by the NIH. So this, if we link it out to find out more, this will go straight to the grants landing page in the dimensions database. So you can find out information about this grant. This has been associated with that data set that's been published on Figshare, which might be linked to the published article that's on the publisher site or on another repository. But basically, it's all about the linked data journey. It's also for people to be transparent about what type of funding information they've received over a given time frame, who the funder is. You can go straight to that grant that's being reported in the Dimensions database, who the primary investigators are, the abstract about this grant, and other similar grants. So it's aggregating all of this information in one spot, and Figshare can do that within an items record page. So again, if we wanted to, I could, Institute of Health, show you some of the open links here through the Dimensions database. So this is hardwired to the Dimensions database. If I decide to click on this one, I can actually check it out before I link it to my Figshare item record. So we can then see that same information presented in the way that we saw before. If it loads, I'm hoping my internet has not dropped out. Well, while that's loading, I can also select that, or I can add in internal grant 1, 2, 3, 4. So it could be free text as well. It could be something that is only applicable to your institute, or maybe your national board, whether or not it's a private funding project and you only want to give a little bit of or minimal information about your funding, you can put it in this field. The source title and the source DOI, these are optional, but again, it shows that something has been linked out to a publication that sits in a publisher site. So one example is, I think this one. This is basically it. You basically have the title and it's linked to that publisher's DOI. So again, completely optional. And then references. References are basically links, and they're URLs mainly, or it could be DOIs to another site. It links your record to other sites. So it could be to your faculty site, it could be to your personal researcher profile, it can be anything. And then there's a license. So the license, again, is of your choosing at an institutional level. So your library staff or your research administration department can actually define this and define what type of licenses are appropriate for you when you publish something. And I find that a lot of learning is needed in order to be able to understand how you're actually meant to distribute and gain recognition for your work based on licenses. All of these, super important date, Madalena test, all of this, these are all custom metadata fields that administrators have the power to control and create at an administrative level. And you can create them to be mandatory or optional. So again, anything with the green dot when you're filling in this form, all of those are mandatory metadata to fill in. So I'm gonna put the date, I'll put my email address. Type today. Digitalfinance.com. And I think we have to select the country. And I'm going to save my changes. Then I can look at this, see whether or not I'm happy with it. I can look at a preview item, see whether or not it doesn't want to preview my file, probably because it's an ugly Word document, that's why. But basically, we can see the minimum metadata that I filled in, the authors, the type of item, my title. This is the group that I belong to, and this is its logo. These are the categories. These are my keywords that I've already filled in. I've linked my funding. Here's my very bad description. And here are all the metadata fields that I've had to fill in and the license. So from here, what I can do is generate a private link, and anyone with that private link can essentially access what I've just created. And the good thing about, log me out. The good thing about this is that when we share something with a private link, you can see that it's shared privately. It's really good for blind peer review, especially, but also sharing large files with a multitude of people, but it removes the name. So this is where it comes in handy for that blind peer review. It also comes in handy when you have to share maybe 88 files with a coworker or a colleague and you don't want to do it over email. So having that, anyone with this link can basically access the content that you are trying to share privately. It's not public, it's private. And then you can disable it at any time. So if I disable this now, this link, if I try and refresh, should come to a tombstone page. So that means that no one now can access it. So someone will have to contact me and ask me for another private link or some way of getting to my files. We can also then apply the embargo and restricted access. So this is where you can control that restriction or that access point to certain people. So being as open as possible, being closed as necessary. And this can be part of your data management plans. You can actually maybe have a list of who you'd like all of your content to be visible to, how much of it should it be visible and accessible, and give reasons why. So when you're forming part of this plan, make sure that all of this comes into consideration, especially on the accessibility and the shareability aspect. So you can embargo the files. If you embargo the whole item, no one can see it essentially. But if we want to embargo my very ugly document, we can select a particular time period, or we can look at a specific date in the future. Let's put the 31st of March. And then we can see who can access the embargoed content. That could be nobody, it could be administrators only. And it could be custom. So it could be my logged in users at my university. Let's select that, and specific people in groups at my university. So it could be all the academic departments. It could be the art history group. It could be the group that I belong to, which is climate science or something like that. Or I could share it with people on a specific IP range. So you are sharing this with people who are only logged in on that specific IP range. Let's just do it for our university peers. Why are they under embargo? Give it a title, give it a reason why. It could be because you're waiting for the publication of your paper, sensitive cultural sensitivity, commercial in confidence, any type of reason really. I can also reserve in advance a handle or a DOI so that I can at least cite this file's record in my output that is being published by Wiley or Springer Nature or Emerald Publishing Group or something like that. So let's save our changes. If I now want to publish, I want to publish my item. Yes, I'm publishing my item and making it public and permanently available. I'm agreeing to the terms. These can be defined by you as an institution, as a university, what your terms are. Yes, I want to publish. And now this should be going into a review process. So this means that it should be in the review pool. See, it is now under review. If we go back to status, this green circle that's not filled in means it's under review. Since I'm already logged in as an administrator with privileges, I can look at the review requests and see that my item is there in the review pool. So anyone this could be set at a department level, a library level, basically anyone can be a reviewer if you give them that permission. This is what we just created. It still won't preview my file. I'm not really sure why. Maybe it's just our demo instance, but I can see here what it would look like if it was public. I will assign the request to myself real quick, save. And I can reassign it to someone else after I'm done reviewing. I can make edits on behalf of whoever submitted this, which is me. I can change around keywords. I can, change the description. I can make modifications or edit on behalf of the submitter or the author. And then I can save those changes. And then I can either decline this review or I can approve and publish. I can write a comment for other reviewers if needed, and I can notify the owner by their email. Let's just approve and publish it. And there we go. It should now be live in that sense. It's no longer in the review pool. If I go to our main demo instance landing page, our home page. It should be right here. This is a great document. So that's what we just published. It's under embargo. Don't know why this is still showing up, but basically now it also shows that people outside my university will not be able to see the items files. So this means only people from my university who are logged in will be able to see the entire record with the file. Publicly, they will only see the metadata. They will only see all of this text and all of those categories and the keywords and the type of license, and that is it. So that's one way of uploading your data. You can also do it via the FTP server or the API if it's a really large file. The other ways of also interacting with and uploading things to Figshare is through our integration with symplectic elements, which basically means it's that research information management system. You can deposit all of your files and metadata and it goes straight into Figshare. Another way is also via a submit page. .eu/submit. And that's basically how we configure this for certain publishers where you have authors who are about to publish with them, I guess, and they don't need a login to use their Figshare instance. So Monash has this actually built for crosswalks. Where are the crosswalks? Are those the crosswalks? Or am I blind? Am I a robot? Basically, they've implemented the submit page for their thesis students so that basically their students don't just publish their thesis without a review check in place. So this is also a way for externals or collaborators outside of your university that doesn't use Figshare for them to also collaborate and also publish to your portal. So this is what it would look like. This is just an example. We're getting a file, we're uploading our files. Let's upload this file. And basically all is needed is all of this metadata to be filled in. And then once this is submitted, it goes into that review workflow. That can be enabled or disabled. It's entirely up to you what your processes are. And then it'll be published with its own DOI or its handle, and it'll be consumable, or it'll be embargoed, or it'll be available to certain people only. So that's another way of uploading and publishing your content into Figshare. But basically, things are private by default until you decide to publish them. So that is a way in which you can store and manage, share privately some of your content. The project space, again, is where you can invite your users or invite your collaborators in a private space, and they can then, you can share and collaborate on top of those. An example really here is where we have project details. There's only one collaborator right now, but I can then invite other people so that they can comment, they can make comments, they can view the files that are associated in this project and then decide to publish. If I edit this, I can then invite people, I can resend invites to them. I can make them a full collaborator, which means they can upload and access files, or they can be view only and they can view, but they can't download, and so on. And with the collections, that's me collecting interesting things in Figshare that's been published on Figshare. So if I go here and look at the collection details, this can be my favorites list of things published by, Mark and his colleagues since 2015 regarding stem cell data. That's just an example. Activities is basically when you're invited to a project, or if you're a reviewer, you'll see your reviews. And the administration tab is basically where, as a full administrator, you have the power to maintain and configure groups. This is basically based on your group structure, on how you want your groups to be structured according to users. You can configure them and create other subgroups. So just like we saw in Monash's repository, they had all of their different groups. You had the music archive, you had the thesis group, you had the Australia-Indonesia group, you had the geophysics group. those are all subgroups under Monash University's main portal. And then you can configure subgroups out of that. And this is where you can also give it a general description, enable storage, and fix or allocate the storage quotas, give people certain permissions, like administrator or institutional reviewer. You can also then create custom metadata fields, which can be mandatory or optional. And this is basically up to you and how you decide to configure this as you see fit. And it can be different per group. And real quick, because I know we're very short on time, if I go back to the admin all groups, you can also then see how your users are also interacting with Figshare. So this is a way where you can download a user report and see how much storage people have. Have they been publishing individual items? How many are in collections or projects? Are they open publicly? Are they private? Do they have altmetric scores and views and downloads? Do they have citations and so on? So you can also then see how people are interacting with it, the engagement aspect. There's also the power to unpublish. So unpublish basically means, someone's published something, it has the wrong file, it has bad spelling on it. All you would have to do is copy the DOI, put it in this box, and then click on publish. And when people start to see or find that item, they'll be led to the request not found. It'll have a tombstone page, and it'll be back in its draft format. So it can be republished with the same DOI. We highly unrecommend anything that's being, to unpublish something with a DOI, because it just breaks the consistency of access essentially, but it can be done. And also there are statistics. I don't believe our staging instance allows to show statistics, but basically it gives an internal overview of how the Figshare platform is being used by your user base. Where are things being found globally? What type of statistics can we generate based on the fields of research that your researchers are publishing in? Which ones are very, very popular? How many items have been created over a weekly or a monthly or a yearly time frame? And you can see trends maybe. Then you can do some reporting. Maybe it's for your external collaborators that they want to find out who they should be collaborating with based on the repository's publishing activities, so on and so forth. And with that, I think we have, yes, go on. I think I'm done.
Apologies, I thought there was a break there. We do have two questions
yes.
In the chat box. So one is, for a personal account, the item doesn't need to be reviewed and will be live soon after the author published the document. Is that correct?
Correct. With a personal account, yes. There's no review involved.
Excellent. And the next question is, what are the differences between Figshare, ResearchGate and Academia Repository?
Oh, very good question. So some of them are seen, funnily enough, a lot of people associate other platforms as social media, but really it's a way in which you can share links to research. It's not so much building a profile, it's just basically you have an account and you're just sharing interesting things with each other. Whereas with Figshare, it is a repository. So whatever you do publish, which is yours, it's your work. It's basically citable, it's discoverable. It's basically for you to build your own profile. And it can be harvested with your other interoperable systems that you might have in place within your university's workflows and processes. I hope that answers the question. Are there, Liz or Jess, are there other questions, or I'm trying to
not that I can see.
Open the chat, but it won't open for me.
No others.
Yeah, do we Handogo, do you have any remarks or comments or anything else that I can help answer that's on your mind?
Okay, thank you, Steph, for
That's
detailed
okay.
explanation for our session today. It's really great. I believe it's really inspirative for our audience. And I see one question here from Pak Ferdinand. Will Figshare provide a new DOI for published paper?
If a DOI already exists for your work, then we can use that existing DOI because it already has an ID. If it really needs another one, we could, but it wouldn't make sense to have a secondary DOI.
Good. Nice. Yeah, as you see all the participants, that this is very interesting topic. And there are many questions here from Ayumi. So any manuscript that we have can be uploaded here and
Yes.
share with others can be cited. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, so if you're sharing privately, you're sharing privately. It's not public, you're only sharing it with certain individuals. But if you are sharing your work with, when it's published with a citable DOI, then it is genuinely sharing publicly. So again, it depends on how you want to share. Do you want to share privately only, or do you want to share with the world? So it's also a behavioral change in that respect.
Yeah, so by using Figshare, all the material can be cited. It is very interesting. So people can cite your pictures, people can cite your maybe your report or your lab report and so forth. So everything can be cited.
Correct.
As Stephanie said before, that everything can be acknowledged using Figshare.
Yes.
Okay, any other question? Please write in the chat box. I think it's really interesting and we need more time, especially to explore all the functionality of the Figshare. We haven't talked about a collection and what else, project in detail, but I think this is very interesting when we discuss about project and collection, because you can build your own portal to display information that can be accessed from different media.
Correct. Yes. No, absolutely. There are so many different functions that you can use Figshare for, but the main one really is the open accessibility of your research content that you produce and you want to get credit for, to gain recognition for the hard work that you do that isn't just a paper. It's for everything else that you create.
Yeah, for example, in my experience, when I produce learning material, learning video for my students, when I put in the YouTube, for example, it cannot be cited well. So it cannot be acknowledged, it cannot be cited, and you cannot see how many people read the or watch the video and the impact of the video. So since now, even your presentation slide can be cited and can be acknowledged using Figshare. Yeah.
Yes, correct. I highly recommend doing that, especially when you have internal conferences and you want to be able to share your teaching and learning materials so that can be shared to a wider audience.
Yeah. Okay. And do not forget, for our next session, it's a really interesting topic with Jess. So Jess will talk about dimension, and Steph had discussed a little bit about dimension and give you what we call not general information about dimension, but later on, Jess will explore all the functionality and how dimension can help you not only to show your research, but also how to find the information and how to gather some article or document that will help you to improve your research. Okay.
Yes.
Do you have any other things to say, Steph?
No, but basically, if anyone does have any questions, please let me know. I will share my contact details and the presentation slides and this recording. Handoko, if that's okay, you can disperse. I will send these to you. Yeah. And then, just get in touch if you have any other questions. I'd be happy to answer.
Okay. Okay, for the next session, please, Jess, do you have any requirement for the next session?
No, No, I think it's been a great turnout today. It's great to see everybody, and I hope to see you all next week at the Dimension session.
Okay, thanks, Des. Okay, I think that's all for our session today. And Bu Ike still with us, Bu Ike? Okay, maybe Bu Ike have something to do. So I think that's all for today. Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Steph. And thank you, Liz, and all participants for our nice session today. Do not forget, for the next week, we will have Dimension session. Thank you for all. And
Yes.
I think we can leave the meeting now, and I'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Terima
Thank
kasih.
you.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Please,
Bye-bye.
those who haven't filled the attendance list, this is for your certificate of participation. So please, I will copy this and I will put it in the chat box so you can fill the data. So we can send you the certificate for the participation for this session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye all. Thank you for coming today.